come not with empty words or soft promises. I come carrying the sound of chains breaking and doors opening. I come with the thunder of a word spoken long ago, echoing through time and roaring into your present. Get ready, because God is not finished with your story, and He's certainly not finished with your situation. Something is about to shift. Something is about to break, and that shift is going to show up in the very place the enemy told you was dead. Your finance. Now, I don't speak this lightly because I've known what it is to lack. I've seen cupboards empty and wallets thin. I've felt the anxiety of bills stacking high like monuments to insufficiency. But even in those valleys, I have known a God who walks beside us, a God who does not abandon us in poverty, but who lifts us up to promise, a God who provides manna in the wilderness and oil that never runs dry. Let me remind you of something. You are not broke. You are between miracles. You are not forgotten. You are positioned for revelation. Because when God is about to move, He often lets everything else fall silent. He lets the balance drop low. He lets the checking account dip into the red. He lets creditors circle. And the phone keep ringing. Not because He is cruel, but because He is about to show you that no bank, no job, no system will get the glory for what He's about to do. I said it before, and I'll say it again. God is about to shock your bank account. And I'm not talking about a scam or a scheme. I'm not talking about a pyramid promise or a get-rich-quick lie. I'm talking about heaven's strategy. I'm talking about God opening the windows of heaven and pouring out blessings you don't have room enough to receive. I'm talking about debts being canceled, businesses being birthed, resources being unlocked, and financial cycles being reversed. You see, we've been taught to believe that struggling is holy, that being poor is a virtue. And don't get me wrong, there is honor in endurance, and there is dignity in waiting. But let us not confuse patience with poverty. Let us not baptize lack and call it righteousness. God has not called you to suffer endlessly. He has called you to steward abundance faithfully. And when the enemy tries to convince you that this word is too bold, too wild, too much, remind him of the widow who poured out oil until every jar in her house and in her neighborhood was full. Remind him of the Israelites who walked out of Egypt, not empty-handed, but with silver and gold. Remind him of the 5 loaves and 2 fish that turned into a banquet. And if you need a modern reminder, look at your own life and remember, every time you didn't know how, but somehow, some way, God made a way. You see, what's coming to you is not based on your job title. It's not limited to your degree, your savings, or your network. God is not consulting your credit score before releasing His promise. When God moves, He moves based on purpose. And you, child of God, you are filled with purpose. There are ideas inside you that haven't been unlocked yet. There is vision in you waiting to be funded. There are businesses, ministries, and innovations trapped under the weight of financial stress. But I came to tell you that weight is lifting. Now I can hear someone say, well, what do I have to do? And to that I say, believe, act so, steward, praise, because faith without works is dead, and vision without preparation is negligence. God is ready to move, but are you ready to receive? There is a sound in the spirit realm. It's the sound of checks being released, of promotions being announced, of contracts being signed, of land being granted, of student loans being paid off, of surprise deposits and sudden open doors. I hear it and I declare it. The drought is over. The famine is ending. The provision is coming. But hear me now, this move is not just for you to spend. It's for you to send. It's not just for luxury. It's for legacy. It's not about stacking wealth just to say you made it. It's about building systems that serve your children's children. It's about setting the captives free, not just spiritually, but economically. Because God is not just calling you out of debt. He's calling you into dominion. He is calling you to own, not just to owe. To lend, not just to borrow. To lead, not just to labor. And that shift doesn't happen by human hands alone. It takes the touch of the Almighty. There will be those who doubt this word. Let them. There will be those who scoff. Let them. There will be those who say, that's just emotion. That's just hype. But what they call hype, I call hope. And what they call emotion, I call evidence. Because I've seen too much, survived too much, overcome too much to doubt now. If God could raise the dead, He can raise your accounts. If He can part a sea, He can part the barriers standing between you and financial freedom. If He can rain manna from heaven, He can rain opportunity into your inbox. Don't limit a limitless God. There comes a time in every life when the natural systems fail, when the numbers don't add up, when the paycheck runs out before the month does, when the doors you knocked on remain shut, and the help you expected doesn't arrive. It's in those moments when your back is against the wall and your options have run dry that the supernatural steps in. And that is when you begin to discover that what man cannot do, God can. What banks may deny, heaven can approve. What your qualifications couldn't open, God's favor can unlock. Because God is not subject to the limitations of this world. He is the source beyond the resource. God does not need a perfect economy to bless you. He doesn't need a job opening to promote you. He doesn't require your credit history to qualify you. In fact, God often waits until all the traditional methods have failed, so that when the breakthrough comes, you'll know it wasn't the system, it was the Savior. It wasn't your degree, your network, or your savings. It was His hand. That's why Scripture says He prepares a table before me in the presence of my enemies. Not in private, not in secret, but in the open, so that all will see and know that this wasn't ordinary. It was divine. Think of the widow with the oil. She had nothing but a small jar, yet God used what she had to do what she couldn't. Think of Peter fishing all night and catching nothing until Jesus stepped in and said, "Cast your net on the other side." Suddenly what was barren became blessed. That's how God works. Suddenly, unexpectedly, overwhelmingly. When He moves, it's not subtle, it's unmistakable. And when He shocks your bank account, it's not just a deposit of money, it's a deposit of purpose, of confidence, of testimony. It's a reminder that you're seen, you're remembered, and you're not forgotten. He is the same God yesterday, today, and forever. He brought manna in the wilderness, and he can bring provision to your present. You may not see how, you may not know when, but heaven has a way of showing up just in time, and when it does, everything changes. You may have been walking through a season of not enough. You may have been counting coins when others were counting investments. You may have felt the pressure of overdue bills, the sting of declined cards, the quiet frustration of trying to stretch a dollar that just won't stretch. But let me tell you plainly and boldly, lack is not your final destination. It may be where you are now, but it is not where you're staying. It may be part of your story, but it is not the last chapter. Lack is a location, but not a life sentence. It is a temporary place, a passing condition, not your permanent identity. Do not decorate the wilderness as if it were your home. Do not plant your hope in survival mode. You were made for more than scraping by. You were created for more than just making it. You are a child of the King, and his promises do not expire in economic downturns or dry seasons. The danger of prolonged lack is that it tries to convince you to settle. It tries to make you believe that this is the best it will ever be. But God never meant for his people to live in Egypt forever. He never meant for them to stay in the wilderness. The promise was always Canaan, a land flowing with milk and honey. And if there's still breath in your lungs, then the promise is still alive. Sometimes God allows lack to develop something deeper in us, to stretch our faith, to purify our motives, to sharpen our vision. But he never leaves us there. The God who brought Joseph out of the pit, the God who brought David from shepherd's field to king's palace, the God who fed Elijah through ravens, that same God has not forgotten you. Lack does not define you. It is not the end of your calling, your destiny, or your potential. It is the setup for a divine reversal. So don't give up in the waiting. Don't grow bitter in the stretching. Don't let the scarcity around you silence the abundance within you. Because where you are now is only the middle, and your miracle is still on the way. For too long, we've been taught, either directly or by implication, that poverty is somehow holy, that having less makes you more righteous, that struggling to survive is the only true evidence of spiritual depth. But that is not the message of the kingdom. That is not the character of a God who calls himself a provider. Let's make it plain, poverty is not holiness. Scarcity is not a badge of purity. Being broke is not a spiritual gift. Now hear me clearly. There is dignity in endurance. There is virtue in contentment. There is character developed in trials. But there is nothing sacred about lack itself. Jesus was not poor in spirit because he had no money. He was poor in spirit because he was humble, yielded and fully dependent on the Father. That's a posture of the heart, not the size of a bank account. Holiness is about purity, obedience, justice, and love. Holiness is walking in the will of God. But lack, especially when it is forced by broken systems, generational oppression, or spiritual stagnation, is not holy. It is something God desires to heal and restore. Throughout Scripture, we see God lift the lowly, feed the hungry, and elevate those who've been pressed down. He doesn't glorify poverty. He moves his people through it. When the Israelites wandered in the wilderness, it wasn't their final inheritance. It was a process, not a promise. The promise was a land of abundance. When the early church had all things in common, they shared so no one would be in need, not so everyone could remain in poverty, but so everyone could rise together. Provision was always God's plan because provision allows purpose to flourish. Let us not confuse humility with poverty or holiness with hardship. God can meet you in your suffering, but He does not intend to leave you there. He wants to supply your needs so that you can be a blessing to others. He wants to move you from just enough to more than enough. Not for greed, but for generosity. Not for status, but for stewardship. Poverty may have been part of your path, but it is not your spiritual identity. You were created to walk in wholeness, spirit, soul, and body. And that includes your financial life. Faith is powerful, but faith alone is not enough. It is the spark, but without action, that spark never becomes a flame. Too many are waiting on God to move while God is waiting on them to step. Faith without action is like a car without fuel, built to move but stuck in place. If you want to see breakthrough in your life, especially in your finances, you must not only believe but also build. You must not only pray but also prepare, because heaven responds to faith that moves. The scriptures are clear. Faith without works is dead. That doesn't mean faith is useless. It means faith comes alive through what you do. Believing God can bless you is the beginning, but stewarding your resources, managing your time, walking in obedience, sowing into purpose, that's what faith looks like with feet. That's what makes room for the miraculous. When Noah built the ark, it had never rained. When Abraham left his homeland, he had no map. When Peter stepped out of the boat, the waves were wild. But in every case, faith demanded action. And with each step of obedience, the impossible became possible. Water held up Peter's feet. The wilderness led Abraham to promise. The ark saved a generation, all because they didn't just believe, they moved. Some of you are praying for financial breakthrough, and God hears you. But He is also waiting for you to take the first step. Open the business, write the plan, make the call, apply again, sow the seed, create the product, clean up the debt, organize the budget. He blesses what you move toward. If you plant, He can multiply. If you walk, He can part the sea. But He won't build what you refuse to touch. Faith without action is hope deferred. But faith partnered with movement invites the supernatural. God will breathe on your effort, favor your diligence, and multiply your obedience. So don't sit still waiting for the stars to align. The door you're praying for may already be open. God is just waiting for you to walk through it. The blessing that's coming to you isn't just for comfort, it's for calling. It's not just about elevating your lifestyle, it's about expanding your legacy. When God begins to move in your finances, When he begins to open unkept doors and release divine provision, don't make the mistake of thinking it's only about having more. No, this blessing is about becoming more, so that what God pours into you can flow through you, shaping lives, families, communities, and generations to come. God is not releasing resources into your hands just so you can upgrade your wardrobe or post about it online. He's blessing you so you can be a bridge, so others can walk across your testimony and find their way to freedom. He's blessing you to break generational curses, cancel cycles of poverty, and lay foundations for those coming behind you. Because real prosperity isn't measured by what you consume. It's measured by what you pass on. The world chases luxury. It idolizes status. It rewards excess. But the kingdom operates differently. Kingdom wealth carries purpose. Kingdom increase carries weight. God is looking for people he can trust with abundance. People who won't let the blessing corrupt their character or dull their compassion. People who will see their success as a strategy for kingdom impact, not a trophy for personal pride. This is why God is intentional with his timing. Sometimes he delays the blessing until the vessel is ready, because it's not about how much you can handle financially, but how much you can steward spiritually. If the blessing came before the vision was clear, you might waste it. But when your heart is aligned with legacy, every dollar becomes a tool. Every opportunity becomes a seed. Every door becomes a mission. Think bigger than you. Think beyond your bills and desires. God is positioning you to be a lender and not a borrower, a builder and not just a buyer. He's putting plans in your spirit that your children's children will benefit from. You're not just breaking even, you're breaking ground. So when the breakthrough comes, and it will, receive it with humility and vision. Use it to build what will outlive you. Let your blessing tell a story. Let it preach a gospel louder than words. Because the true measure of God's provision is not found in what you gain, but in what you leave behind. There is a divine shift taking place in your life. A movement from bondage to breakthrough. From scarcity to sovereignty. God is not content to see you trapped in cycles of debt, weighed down by obligations that steal your peace and limit your purpose. No, he is calling you into a place of dominion where you are no longer a slave to your finances, but a steward over them. This shift is not merely about numbers on a statement. It is about your identity, your authority, and your inheritance. Debt is a heavy yoke. It presses down, restricts freedom, and keeps many walking in fear. But dominion is the freedom to manage, to multiply, to bless, and to lead. It is the power to say yes when others say no. It is the ability to give when others must beg. This shift from debt to dominion is a spiritual and practical revolution, birthed in faith and forged in obedience. You must understand, God's plan is not for you to live paycheck to paycheck, worrying about what comes next. His plan is for you to live in abundance, with open hands ready to receive and open hearts ready to give. He desires for you to have resources to fulfill your calling, to support your family, to invest in your community, and to fund the works of justice and mercy. This transition will require discipline. Discipline to cut what doesn't serve your future, to say no to debt, to embrace budgeting and wise stewardship. It will require courage to walk away from the habits and mindsets that keep you bound. But the reward is worth it. Freedom to dream again. Freedom to build again. Freedom to rise again. Know this: the God who led his people out of Egyptian bondage is leading you out of financial bondage. The same power that parted the Red Sea is at work in your finances. The same voice that said, "Let my people go," is calling you into freedom. It's time to take your place not as a debtor, but as a ruler over your resources, your future, and your destiny. Step into this shift with faith. Walk into your dominion with confidence. Because when God moves, chains break and mountains bow, debt loses its grip and dominion takes hold. And that, beloved, is your inheritance.